you filed a defamation suit against Cardinal Gleim, Archbishop of Warsaw. It was never done, anything like that. Really challenging an archbishop and the Catholic Church.
And we won.
And it was extraordinary at the time.
Right.
Could you tell us the precedent and how this came about, since it's a really, really fascinating story? It basically takes legal and applying it to all different types of
Well, one of the great rabbis in New York is a man named Avi Weiss. I don't know if any of you know him. He's written a book called Spiritual Activism. He is a kind of Martin Luther King person.
He's the Riverdale
rabbi. He is totally opposed to any violence, but he sits in and demonstrates whenever he feels that human rights are being violated. And he went to Auschwitz when some nuns at Auschwitz wanted to create a convent there in order basically to convert the souls of the dead Jews who had died in Auschwitz. And Avi Weiss did not think that was an appropriate way to deal with it. And by the way, the Catholic Church in the United States agreed with him. All the cardinals were on our side of this. So Avi Weiss went there, and he simply wore a prayer shawl, and he sat and he prayed. And he said, I'm going to pray for the souls of the people who were killed in Auschwitz. And he was arrested and removed. And Cardinal Gleim made a speech saying that Avi Weiss had come to rape nuns. And I mean, the idea that you would charge a rabbi with that. And then he said the Jews were responsible for all the problems of Poland, for the alcoholism that Poland has, for communism, for drugs. It was a just classic old-fashioned anti-Semitic speech. Never wrote a libel suit before. Never wrote a defamation suit before. I generally favor free speech, but there was no free speech in Poland when it came to this. Nobody had the guts to answer, and nobody had the courage to respond. So I decided it would be useful to have a vehicle to bring that lawsuit. It was shortly after Pope John Paul XXIII had wonderfully talked about how the sin of anti-Semitism must end. And so we brought the suit in 3 different places. We brought it in Poland, in Częstochowa, where the speech had been made. We brought it in New York, and we brought it at the Vatican under canon law, hiring a canon lawyer, a Jesuit priest, to represent us. And when I went to Poland to depose the cardinal, I couldn't get a translator to work with me because everybody knew that I was going to be deposing the primate of the Catholic Church. We had to bring our own finally. And when the Vatican ruled against him and said that he had to apologize and had to withdraw his statement, he folded and gave up and essentially apologized. And the idea that a rabbi from New York could bring a cardinal to his knees and make him apologize, not something that would have happened 100 years ago. And the important thing is we had American Catholics and the Vatican on our side. It wasn't Jews versus Catholics. It was good people versus one SOB who happened to be wearing a robe of the church. He should have been expelled from the church for that speech. And he's not the last cardinal, unfortunately, to have made a speech like that. Cardinal Rodriguez, the Cardinal of Honduras, not so long ago, blamed the Jews for the pedophile scandal of the Catholic Church, saying the Jews were responsible for publicizing it because the Jews own the New York Times, right? The New York Times owns the Boston Globe until recently. And the Boston Globe exposed the scandal of the church. Now, of course, all the writers of the Boston Globe who exposed the scandal were all religious Catholics, devoted Catholics, all graduates of DC College, and loved their church and didn't want to see their church defiled by half a dozen terrible predatory priests. So the Jews had nothing to do with it whatsoever but the cardinal. And I campaigned against Cardinal Rodriguez when he was one of the people on the short list for Pope. And look at the result. This great, great man now is Pope, who is bringing people back to the Catholic Church. So many of my friends are saying that children who have stayed away from the church for years are now coming back and really finding somebody with whom to identify in the church and a leader. And it's good news, good news.